This is the Art of Darkness podcast with Kevin Kautzman.
And Abby Lucas.
We're a couple of very online writers interested in the dark side of creativity.
This show is about art and the people who make it, what it costs them, and what it takes to bring something unique and impactful into the world.
On each episode, we examine the life and work of an artist you might think you know.
Don't worry, they're all safely dead.
We aren't. Find us online at artofdarkpod.com, and please support the show through Patreon or Substack. You get extra stuff. Thank you. We're back, Art of Darkness. Abby is in the hot seat once again for a core episode. Very excited. I've got my water. I'm all jacked up on coffee. I'm ready to go. This is what we're here to do. Abby, how are you?
I am doing well, thank you. How are you, Kevin?
Never better. Never better. Cannot wait. I love getting to ride shotgun for episodes like And once this is done, I will begin really prepping in earnest my problematic Picasso episode. The Problems of Pablo. Life of Pablo. But in the meantime, you're helming this core episode.
I am
Who are
indeed.
we covering today, Abby?
We are covering the multi-hyphenate British comedian, author, poet, actor, musician, Spike Milligan.
Who?
Spike Milligan.
Well, this is where, and then this is where you ask me the question.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you know about Spike Milligan?
Who? I'll confess, I really don't know anything about Spike Milligan. I think this is one of those, maybe it's my infamous Philistinism, or maybe it's sort of a Commonwealth thing where I'm not, not
I think
so
it might
familiar.
be that he hated Americans.
Well, listen, I do too. I promise you he doesn't. Of course, I am kidding. Sort of. I mean, there are a lot of us. We don't even know how many Americans there are anymore. Is it 360 million? Is it 400 million? A lot of people on this in this economic zone we call the United States of America. But I know that Spike Milligan has a bridge named after him in Australia. One of our listeners. Yeah. That's really about all I know. So this is quite fun because I get to learn today, along with our audience, who Spike Milligan was and why we should give a damn. So very exciting, Abby. Fun.
Well, I learned a lot as well because previously all that I really knew of him was from my childhood, and he wrote a lot of poems and sort of nonsense things for children. And I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot.
Okay, great. Well, let me, since you're still getting your sea legs for Art of Darkness here in season 5, let me just do real quick housekeeping. artofdarkpod.com. We have a Discord channel. You can go to artofdarkpod.com/Discord. It'll take you there. Everything's at artofdarkpod.com. We really always ask for Patreon support, so please consider supporting the pod. Patreon.com/artofdarkpod. Really means a lot. Thank you to the patrons. We really appreciate all of you. And, if you can't, chuck in some money, tell people about the pod, go and give it a nice rating. That stuff matters. I mean, it's us versus the algorithm, really, in so many ways. I was talking earlier, and we were sort of going like, there was a bunch of protests in America, and there's a Zoomer who is sort of grouchy because it's like the Zoomers aren't showing up. And to which somebody said, yeah, they're all working or they're all busy. Of course, it's all these retired boomers, And somebody said it's like the boomers versus the computer is what. And I was like, yeah, it's sort of
okay, computer.
Television.
Okay, boomer.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of house television versus house algorithm is sort of what's going on politically right now, among other things. We started this season with McLuhan, and I think McLuhan would appreciate that sort of analysis and thought. But of course, before we really get into the episode. Abby, you got to tease the After Dark, which is the stuff that we save for the patrons after the main episode. So what juicy tidbits do you have for us for the After Dark?
Okay, so for the After Dark, it's all World War II. Spike Milligan's war
Hmm.
and absurdist's journey through World War II.
Oh, an absurdist journey through World War II. Spicy. Okay. Well, we'll see if we could further dismantle the post-war consensus, which seems to be the project that many podcasters are taking right now. Of course, ours is an arts podcast, an arts and culture podcast, and a
We
history
seem to come
podcast.
up against World War II a lot, though.
It's
It,
it's inescapable. It is
yeah.
the the sort of year zero of the sort of mythopoetic zeitgeist is World War II. So this will be fascinating. I cannot wait. And of course, that places us in time where Mr. Milligan is in time. But that'll be great. And so yeah, if you want to hear extra Art of Darkness, there's a huge back catalog with the great Brad Kelly, co-host emeritus, and then of course we've got a lot more coming this season. So I think it's worth $5 a month if you want to chuck in. Patreon.com/Art of Dark Pod. Abby, I think that's it for now. I think we can just get down to the business of doing the episode. I cannot wait. This is your second core episode that you're doing, and I know the pressure is mounting.
Yes.
So just take a deep breath, breathe out, okay? And I can't wait. It's going to be great. All right. So what do you got
Okay.
for us, Abby?
So I am going to go through my source material first.
Hmm.
A lot of this episode is going to be through the voice of Spike Milligan himself and
Hmm.
his former secretary, then manager, then agent, Norma Farnes. So the books that I have are Spike Milligan's Meaning of Life, which is an autobiography of sorts. It's a collection of pieces from his many, many books. I think he had like 80 books. And so this was edited by Norma. We've got Spike, an intimate memoir, which is Norma Fantz herself, her memoir of working with Spike, as well as just sort of biographical details from the parts of his life that she wasn't involved in. And then I have the first of his war memoirs called Adolf Hitler and My Part in His Downfall.
Okay. Right. The
I
Austrian.
Spoiler alert, he never actually meets Adolf Hitler.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. And
Wasted opportunity.
the final piece, other than a lot of like YouTube videos here and there, was a documentary that the BBC made in 1996 called Spike, a Documentary. So to get into it, comedian, poet, author, actor, and musician Spike Milligan was the godfather of British absurdism, a war-haunted clown and a poet who could swing from whimsy to despair in a single breath. As the chaotic force behind the Goon Show, he tore up the rules of post-war comedy with surrealism, sound effects, and sheer irreverence, laying the groundwork for Monty Python and a whole new comedic language. However, his brilliance came at a cost. Spike lived with severe bipolar disorder, enduring psychotic breaks, hospitalizations, and long battles with depression, all while making a nation laugh. He could be wildly funny, devastatingly sharp, and at times deeply problematic, erratic, cruel, and even racist. His humor was anarchic and untethered, part playground, part battleground, and behind every joke was a man in open warfare with his own mind. He made comedy dangerous, dazzling, and deeply human, and left a legacy as fractured and fascinating as he was.
Okay.
His sense of his sense of humor is best described as surreal, anarchic, and childlike, with a sharp streak of satire and a deep undercurrent of melancholy. His jokes often made no logical sense, yet somehow felt emotionally precise. He delighted in non sequiturs, absurd sound effects, silly voices, all of which he employed to poke fun at empire, war, religion, and bureaucracy with a razor-sharp pen. His comedy was often described as anti-logic, a precursor to the Monty Python brand of surrealism, but with more emotional volatility. It could flip from joyful nonsense to existential despair in seconds. He once said, "My jokes are the truth wearing a clown mask. Chaos with purpose, silliness with soul." Eddie Izzard described Milligan as the godfather of alternative comedy. From his unchained mind came forth ideas that just had no boundaries, and he influenced a new generation of comedians who came to be known as alternative. So to start off, before I kick into his childhood, I'm going to read you a poem that has stuck in my head since childhood. It's from the 1959 book Silly Verse for Kids, and in 1998 it was voted the UK's favourite comic poem in a nationwide poll, ahead of other nonsense poems by poets such as Lewis Carroll and Edward Lear. It's called On the Ning Nang Dong. On the Ning Nang Dong, where the cows go bong and the monkeys all say boo. There's a Nong Nang Ding where the trees go ping and the treetops jibba jabba joo. On the Nong Ning Nang, all the mice go clang and you just can't catch 'em when they do. So it's Ning Nang Nong, cows go bong, Nong Nang Ding, trees go ping, Nong Ning Nang, mice go clang. What a noisy place to belong is the Ning Nang Dong.
Wonderful. You could do a warm up. It's like an acting warm up. Many mumbling mice
Yeah,
making merry music in the moonlight, mighty nice. Yeah, fun.
exactly. Yeah.
Very, very fun. That's some weaponized nonsense.
There's going to be a lot of nonsense.
Very good.
So, to start off his childhood, this comes from Spike Milligan's Meaning of Life, his collection of autobiographical works. Spike's mother, Florence Mary Winifred Kettleband, was born in Woolwich in 1893.
Spike's mother, Anglo. Say it one more time. Give me that name one more time. That's incredible.
Florence Mary Winifred Kettleband.
Winifred. That's a name you don't hear much anymore.
Winifred.
Love that.
No, there's not many Winifreds these days.
Beautiful name.
Her father, Alfred, had been born in Agra, India. Okay, it's still deeply English.
Uh-huh.
And enlisted as a boy soldier in the Royal Artillery. Her mother, Margaret, had been born at Gosport, England, the daughter of a regimental sergeant major in the Royal Artillery. The family were interested in music, theatre, and music hall, so it followed that they visited Woolwich Empire to see Alfred's favourite acts, G.H. Eliot, Eugene Stratton, and Dan Leno. At the end of the Boer War, Alfred was sent to a military depot in Ahmednagar. I'm going to have to say that a lot, so I've got to get it right. Ahmednagar, India, where Florence and Margaret joined him. In 1903, they moved to Alfred's new posting in Kirky. Spike's father, Leo Alfonso, was born in Sligo, Ireland in 1890. Leo's father, William, was also in the Royal Artillery. In 1896, the family moved to Poplar, London. William was captivated by the theatre and got an evening job as a stagehand in the Poplar Hippodrome, which led to his appearing as an extra, eventually taking on the major roles at the Queen's Theatre in Poplar. He enrolled Leo.
Hang on. Wait. So he started out, this is his father?
That's his father, yeah.
So he started out as a stagehand and he worked his way up to leading roles?
Mm-hmm.
Love that. I love that. Everybody, you really can just do things. You really can just go into the theater. Yeah. I mean that. You probably don't want to. Do you like money? Do you like peace of mind and mental health?
Oh, yeah, don't get in the theater if you like money.
Yeah, but right. But if you're desperate for human connection, start as a stagehand and you'll work your way up to leading roles in the Hippodrome. Quite seriously though, I mean, I know I'm sort of being glib here, but like this is something that David Mamet talks about too. He says like back in the day when they were coming up in Chicago, they had no backup plan. And you just did it. You did everything when you went into the theater at that point. And there is still a spirit of that in the theater, which I love. People just come together and do stuff. You can just do things. Anyway, go on, Abby.
I mean, or you could be like Spike's entire family and just do the theater military combo.
Right. That's an unusual combo you maybe wouldn't think of so much in the United States, in America, where theater is really the island of misfit toys. Over there, you can be an artilleryman and then go perform in a pantomime.
Yeah, and that's both his maternal grandfather and his paternal grandfather.
Listen, the family business.
It's the family business.
Murder on behalf of the state and theater.
And theater.
Yeah, that's fine.
You've got to get your catharsis somehow.
Absolutely. Yes, you do. Yeah. Well, many great plays have been written about war. In any event, yeah, go on, Abby.
So William had enrolled Leo into the Stedman School of Dancing and encouraged him to play the trumpet. He then forced him to join the army as a boy soldier in 1904, enlisting him into the Royal Artillery at Shrapnel Barracks, Woolwich. In 1906, Leo was promoted to trumpeter and took part in the army concerts, dancing and singing, and became a champion at the soft shoe shuffle. He adopted the stage name Leo Gann after he had won several talent contests. On the 14th of December 1911, he sailed on the SS Plassey, having been posted to India. He arrived in Bombay and traveled to Kirky.
Well, and what is coming, right? I mean, the Great
Well,
War. Yeah.
yeah. So Kirky became the meeting point for Spike's parents. There, Florence and Leo fell in love, eloped, and were married by registrar in room 13 of the Pune Hotel. Florence's family were appalled, and when Leo returned from Mesopotamia a year later, they insisted on a church wedding at St. Patrick's Church in Pune. This took place on the 19th of August, 1915. By then, Florence had become an accomplished organist and trained contralto. Leo was appearing in army concerts, and together they formed a duo entertaining the troops. In 1917, Leo was posted to Ahmednagar, and there on the 16th of April, 1918, Florence gave birth to Terence Allen Milligan.
Not named Spike yet. That's not his Christian name.
Not named Spike yet. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask that. I assume not. Yeah. Hmm. And I guess we're going to find out how he came to be called Spike, but don't, you know, no spoilers.
No spoilers. Yeah. So here is a poem about birth from the book Small Dreams of a Scorpion. Me, born screaming small into this world, living I am. Occupational therapy twixt birth and death. What was I before? What will I be next? What am I now? Cruel answer carried in the jesting mind of a careless god. I will not bend and grovel when I die. If he says my sins are myriad, I will ask why he made me so imperfect. And he will say, my chisels were blunt. And I will say, then why did you make so many of me?
That's quite a heavy poem. Mm.
That's from, he wrote that in 1966. And it says he wrote it at the Bethlehem Hospital in Highgate. I don't know whether that was a birth of one of his children or one of his hospitalizations.
I'm gonna guess, having been through some births, probably one of the hospitalizations would be my guess. But no, you know what? You might be right. I mean, maybe it was an overnight. You know, who knows? Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So young Terry spent his childhood in Pune and later in Rangoon, capital of British Burma. He was educated at the Convent of Jesus and Mary, Pune, and St. Paul's High School in Rangoon.
Are
Spike's
these
relationship.
are these Catholics?
Yeah, they are Catholics.
Based the one true faith. Gotta get it in. It's my shtick. I gotta get it in.
My alternative name for this podcast is Kevin's Big Book of Catholics.
We cover a lot of Catholics, but it's not, we don't have any. I will say we don't have any bias towards selecting Catholics. It just sort of happens.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
The two that I had selected here just turned out to be Catholics. I don't know if I have many more this year.
Yeah, sure. It'll come up. You know, it comes up in surprising ways. It's a big church, as we say. But cool. Go on.
Spike's relationship with his parents was a mix of affection, distance, and subtle emotional tension. English. His father, Leo Milligan, was a career army man in the British Indian Army, a disciplinarian but also musically gifted and something of a joker himself. He introduced Spike to music, especially brass instruments, which became a lifelong outlet and companion. Spike admired his father, but Leo was often away due to his military service, creating a lingering sense of emotional absence. His mother, Florence Florrie Kettleband, was English, strong-willed, and a devout Catholic. She could be stern and conservative, and while Spike often spoke fondly of her, he also hinted at a childhood constrained by propriety, repression, and emotional reserve. He later described his home life as warm but with shadows at the edges. In the 1966 BBC documentary about his life, he spoke about being sad at his father's absence and of his mother said, "She used to dote on me. I was covered in dote marks." A flair for performance ran in the family, and so did eccentricity. From Milligan's Meaning of Life. According to Castle's three-page dictionary for computerized idiots, the word eccentric means deviating from the center, an oddity, a mechanical contrivance for converting circular into reciprocating rectilinear motion, especially that operating the side valve of a steam engine. Having been accused by the Bolting brothers of being an eccentric, I'm puzzled as to why they didn't give me my correct title, i.e., a mechanical contrivance for converting circular into reciprocating, etc., etc., etc. Racing back through my boyhood, I realized that my whole family were, as I said, mechanical contrivances for converting circular into etc., etc. Let's start with my father. For a start, I thought every football fan who listened to his team, Arsenal, on the wireless, like my father, wore a red and white football jersey and carried a football rattle and took swigs from a beer bottle. When TV started and he could see the game, he added a referee's whistle. Even on that, he had a variant. He would turn off the TV sound, blindfold himself, and listen to the radio commentary, every now and again, then stealing a glance at the screen to see if the commentary tied up with the game. The night before the match, he would unroll a small plan of a football pitch, and using sugar lumps dipped in red ink for Arsenal, he would lock himself in the parlor. We would hear him shouting out instructions. It's a long ball down the middle that will do it. Forget penetration. There's too many in the goal mouth. It's the headed ball over the defense. 3 goals and you're on to a bonus of 10 shillings a man. You can live it up, and so on. For economy's sake, my mother used to use the inked sugar cubes, and all throughout the soccer season, I drank red tea. My mother's side, the kettle bands, were also mechanical contrivances, etc., especially my late uncle Huey, who would try and see how far he could walk without opening his eyes. He once managed 3/4 of a mile. For this, he chose a large, barren, treeless plain in Hyderabad. Hyderabad.
Okay. All
But
right.
it took him so long that he was stricken with sunstroke. He moved to London where there were no large treeless plains. Trying to break his record, he was knocked down by a tram in Catford SE6. When he was discharged from Lewisham Hospital, he took up another test of self-control, holding his breath underwater. This, dear reader, is not all. His mother, the late Margaret Burnside Kettleband, my grandmother, who looked the epitome of normality, left behind her a trail of yellow powder. She swore that she had never had arthritis in her legs because every morning she poured 2 ounces of sulfur into her socks. When she and Grandpa did the Lancers at the Gallop at the Governor's Ball in Pune, they were soon swirling in a knee-high yellow dust. My grandpa, Trumpet Major Alfred Henry Kettleband MM, was all in the same mold. A
Okay.
respectable
So we're
rich,
getting a list of family eccentricities. It's kind of
yeah.
wonderful. It's very fun. You know, there's a wise philosopher Zazu in The Lion King once said, "There's one in
Hmm.
every family." Sometimes it's a whole family.
It's the whole
Sometimes it's
family.
absolutely. This is fun. He's sort of saying I didn't fall that far from the tree. I think he's sort of making the point that maybe he like weaponized it. Like
Yeah,
he turned it into his whole thing. Yeah, yeah. Sulfur in the socks.
sulfur in the socks.
Can you imagine the smell? You know it smell crazy in there. Mm-hmm. Okay.
At the Governor's Ball.
At the governor's ball in India. Okay. Go on.
So the last of the eccentrics, Major Alfred Henry Kettleband, a respectable rich Hindu land, one Percy Lalkaka, Urdu translation, Red Dung, fell madly in love with my Auntie Eileen, but he was frightened off. My grandfather would frequently appear in his wife's floral nightgown. Holding a boiled egg and a spoon, he would glide past them, grinning and saying, "There's going to be a frost tonight in Quetta," and disappear into the bathroom where he could be heard pouring buckets of water into the WD bath. A pause, then he would reappear clad in shorts, now holding a spoonful of curry powder. "But it's going to be damned hot tonight." It terminated the romance.
Wow. Okay. Very, very interesting family. Very strange. A lot of India ties, uh,
Hmm.
the Catholicism, the military, but we play instruments in the military. You know, we put on
Hmm.
little plays for the boys. You know, just such an odd, such an unusual family. Fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not that familiar with what they were up to in India, but I don't know what the
Colonizing.
colonials. Well,
They
yeah,
were
colonizing,
colonizing.
obviously, but
Mhm.
like, were they up against many battles? Is what I'm saying.
Right. Okay, I see. I understand. Yeah, they're just sort of like, yeah, in place. Right. But the war is
Yeah,
coming, right? I mean, so we've got World War One here. I mean, are we through that or?
I think we might be through that. He was
Yeah,
born
yeah,
in,
we're through that. So it sounds like maybe
yeah,
they avoided the worst of it.
mm.
So
Yeah, they
fun,
were just
cool.
trumpeting.
They're just trumpeting and putting on little shows.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, this is
dancing at balls.
one of the more interesting clans that we've covered on this show. I mean, we've done
Hmm.
over 80 of these core episodes. This is a real clan sort of a vibe. It's very, very fun. I like that this embrace of the weird. Like it's
Yeah,
okay to have that one weird thing that you do. I love the pretending to be the Gooners with your sugar cubes as you're. It's almost like he's trying to manifest a win
yeah.
for his football team. Fun, cool.
Here is a poem that Spike wrote about his boyhood in India. It's called India, India. As a boy, I watched India through fresh empirical eyes. Inside my young khaki head, I grew not knowing any other world. My father was a great warrior. My mother was beautiful and never washed dishes. Other people did that. I was only
Hmm.
4. I remember they cleaned my shoes, made my bed. Ither ow, com karu, com karau. Yet in time I found them gentler than the khaki people. They smiled in their poverty. After dark, when the khaki people were drunk in the mess, I could hear Minima and her family playing in their godon. In the bazaar, the khaki men are brawling. No wonder they asked us to leave.
Hmm. Do you
Um,
know what is this word karki? What is that?
Khaki, like the green that is in army uniforms.
Oh, khaki.
Khaki, khaki.
Khaki. Yeah, you gotta get khaki. All right. For the Americans. Throw us a bone
The
here, Abby.
Americans, it's khaki. Yeah.
Khaki. Wait, that is one that how did I know? You say karki? Like
Cocky.
karki?
Like
Cocky. Okay.
cocky, but not quite cocky.
Got it. All right, good. This is
Yeah.
good. I'm feeling more cosmopolitan every episode we do. I'm a globalist now, people. we're yeah, and I'm an Atlanticist here, crossing the ocean every
The
episode with
yeah, across the pond.
across the pond. Yeah, fascinating. So his childhood was in India then, and it sounds like they must have had
Mm.
servants and everything too. I mean,
Yeah,
if mother never did the dishes.
the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, wow, wild. Yeah. Interesting, very unusual childhood. Hmm.
So he once joked, "My parents made me what I am, a wreck." Like much of Spike's humor, it was funny because it wasn't entirely a joke.
Oof. Jeez. I learned it from you, man. That is tough. I'm a parent 4 times over, and you do dread messing your children up. It's a big
Well,
responsibility.
you're going to. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, the best thing you can hope for is that they resent you, so they go out and become independent and
they
start
go out and become
podcasts and
podcasters.
sure, yeah, become podcasters or go into the theater. So, no, that's interesting. So he had the presence of mind to sort of say, my parents made me into a wreck.
Mm.
Yeah, fascinating. All right.
Yeah, and this bit from his book Depression and How to Survive It goes on to explain
Mm.
why. My father and mother loved theatricals. They were given time in the army in those days. Yeah, they were given time in the army in those days, but they rowed. The sound of rows
Mm.
always upset me. I can remember my father and mother having a row in Rangoon, which upset me. I can still hear it ringing in my ears, this terrible screaming and shouting. I have always been hypersensitive to noise. We had just come from Pune to Rangoon, where my father had already been posted in advance of us, and I think he'd been having an affair with an Anglo-Indian girl, a slant-eyed temple maiden of Kipling. He's going to say some
Mm.
offensive stuff throughout this episode. Some of it I'm going to have to dance around a little bit, but I'll continue. And
As
he
we and,
was,
just let me just give retweets are not endorsements here. Okay.
yes,
By the
yeah.
way, this is a history podcast, and I don't even think we need to explain this, but there are some idiots out there who seem to misinterpret things like that, willfully misinterpret things like this, like we're reveling in this. And it's like, okay, we'll dance around some of the maybe the more hardcore stuff, but we're also trying to give a history here. This is first and foremost a history podcast. Every
Mm.
subject we cover is dead, therefore it is history. And the only way to do that is to cover some offensive things. It's also called Art of Darkness. All right. So if the show's not for you, the show's not for you. But I refuse to take ad hominem garbage because of this is what we do, right? And
Yeah.
in any case, Abby, go on, right? Okay.
And of course, this is a direct quote from him, obviously. Um, he was saying, I only took her out dancing, and the screaming match went on, which frightened me very much. Mother was always either hugging me close and loving me to death or hating me and screaming at me. I couldn't understand it. I didn't understand the extremes of temperament. I couldn't cope with it at all. Father was a soldier and he was away a lot from home. My mother was very highly strung and not cruel, but used to beat me sometimes quite violently. And I think there was this resentment that I didn't have anybody to go to. I thought when you got beaten by your mother, you went to your father and vice versa. I don't know. It's a mystery. I'd like to be put to sleep one day and asked about it. I don't know what it was all about. I believe I wished my father was with me more. I think I wanted some extra attention. I remember it was very awful lying there all wet. He used to wet the bed. And then I remember being picked up and dried and powder being put on and clean pajamas and then being tucked up again in fresh sheets. And it was a very wonderful thing indeed to be put back to sleep again, clean and dry and warm. He would come back and we would all have a jolly time shooting deer. Actually, I didn't like that. I remember one was pregnant and it was like an arrow in my head. I think that's why I'm a vegetarian.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we got a real. He's a sensitive young man. We got a real sensitive
Mm.
soul here. Yeah, without a doubt.
Spike later reflected on his childhood in India with a kind of wistful surrealism. It was, he said, a place of vibrant color and strange customs, where elephants passed the house and the food was better than anything he ever ate in England. But the
Mm.
colonial structure also troubled him. He saw its unfairness early on and never entirely shook a sense of guilt. It was a world both enchanted and unjust, and it burned into his imagination. He would say, it was an ideal childhood. I loved the lakes, the beautiful colors, and the gentle people. It was here, too, that Spike got his taste for the military. Spike loved the army life as the fourth generation of Royal Artillery soldiers. In 1924, Leo Milligan was posted to Rangoon in Burma, and the following year, on the 3rd of December, Spike's brother Desmond Patrick was born. In 1926, Leo gave Spike a birthday present of his first gun belt. And in 1930, at the age of 12, Spike started his own army. It consisted of 5 soldiers, himself, his brother Desmond, Sergeant Taylor's son, the Halvadar's son, and their servant's son, whose name truly was Hari Krishna. Spike named his army the Lemanian Army and wrote an anthem, Fun in the Sun. The same year, he joined the 14th Machine Gun Company. According to his brother, Spike could dismantle a Vickers 303 machine gun and reassemble it. After practicing it 100 times, he drove everybody mad. So to take his mind off the gun, his father bought him a banjo, which he practiced 100 times, driving everybody mad. It was the beginning of his love of music. His ideal childhood continued. Leo gave Spike and Desmond a pair of old muskets, with which they pretended to shoot birds, cats, dogs, lions, and tigers. In fact, the whole family were interested in guns. The boys had their muskets, Leo had 3 or 4 pistols, and Florence had her .44 Winchester rifle. As late as 1967, when Spike visited his parents in Woy Woy, Australia, one of the highlights of his visit was to spend time with his father in his gun room.
All right, cool. Guns, comedy, Catholicism, the military, bedwetting. We got it all. It's all
We got
coming
it all.
together here. Yeah. Great pick. Yeah, this guy's really a lot of fun. Yeah. He's reminding me of Hunter for some reason. I
Oh,
mean,
oh yeah, he
maybe it's
had
the
a
gun thing. There's kind of an irreverence. Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
there was a lot of guns and jokes in Hunter's
hmm
childhood. Mm.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting. Cool.
So his father remained in the Indian Army after the end of the First World War, steadily promoted until the family's lifestyle became almost lavish.
Hmm.
Milligan considered that my old man lived the life of a gentleman on a sergeant's pay. After army cuts meant his father's position was no longer required, Spike traveled by sea from India to England for the first time. He arrived on a winter's morning and was bemused by the climate, so different from India's, remembering the dock's terrible noise and everything so cold and grey. It was all boring to me. It was sunless.
I cannot imagine. I mean, I
Yeah, going
having
from
first
India
visited,
to
yeah, having
London.
first visited London when I was, gosh, I mean, my mid 20s from North Dakota, Minnesota. It's a lot, but it's there's a like an otherness to London for Americans. But I mean, I can't even imagine you're born in India. It's very, very strange. Must feel like coming home, but not. Like this is
Yeah.
our culture, but what is this place? It's very gray and rainy, and the air is
And
foul.
yeah,
Yeah,
going there
yeah,
the
can't
first time
imagine.
in winter would be like, oh God, no.
Yikes. Yeah,
I
very
think it was
strange.
spring when I first arrived here, and
You
it
got
was
fooled.
sunny and like quite nice.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
but
they got you.
they got
You're
you.
still there.
I remain here, yes.
Indeed.
Um, he said, I remember leaving Rangoon. I was 14 and I stood on the deck of the ship and I burst into tears, but my mother never
Mm.
knew, nor my father. Nobody ever knew. I didn't let on. I kept that sort of thing to myself. Odd thing, but the only other time I remember crying like that was when I was on the boat that was going to take us on the invasion of North Africa. It was late night in Liverpool, and all the soldiers had gone down below deck to their hammocks, and I stayed on deck looking at the water, and I burst into uncontrollable fits of crying. Perhaps I recalled the previous trip. I am not very good at leaving things.
Mm. Mm.
So his mother Florence found the transition to England after India deeply dispiriting, used to the sensory richness and sprawling social life of the colonies, as well as having servants for every imaginable thing. She
Ooh.
she struggled with the grey austerity and emotional reserve of post-war Britain. The family's return marked a kind of cultural come down, and Spike absorbed some of her disappointment. It fed into his later disdain for conformity, his loathing of dullness, and his constant craving for colour, noise, and irreverence. The Milligan family lived in England in somewhat straitened circumstances. Leo Milligan only being able to find a poorly paid job in the Associated Press photo library, Milligan recalled his mother being often tense and angry, a domestic tyrant, due to having to manage on next to no income. After moving to Brockley, southeast London, Milligan attended Brown Hill Road School, later to be named Catford Boys' School, and St. Saviour's School, Lewisham High Road. Among the more important things he learnt at Brown Hill Road School was self-pleasure. He remarked in the Spike
Oh.
documentary,
Hmm.
wanking. All the
Yeah,
boys used to
right.
go into the toilets to do it.
Okay.
um, Spike's father caught him one day and didn't know what to do. Stop it, he said. Do you want all your children to be thin?
Known fact. Yeah.
After leaving school, Spike worked as a clerk in the Woolwich Arsenal, played the trumpet, and discovered jazz. He also joined the Young Communist League to demonstrate his hatred of Oswald Mosley's British Union of Fascists, who were gaining
Ah.
support near his home in South London.
That's a strong move if you don't like the fascists to go, yep, I'm a communist. I
Yeah.
don't like these guys.
All
I'm
the
a
other way.
communist. Yep, 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 yep. Yeah, that blue-haired barista wouldn't go out on a date with me. Now I'm interested in the third position. Many such cases. There's nobody reacts and says I'm a moderate centrist.
Well, it's a pendulum, right?
Right. It's a strong feelings.
Yeah,
That's
big
funny.
feelings.
Hmm.
Um, Spike's first job at the age of 14 was as a clerk to a bookkeeper at the Stone Engineering Company. Meanwhile, he joined the local band, a new era rhythm boys, the New Era Rhythm Boys, where he learned to play the bass. He was sacked from Stone's Engineering, but soon got a job as a van boy delivering confectionery and sweets. After
Uh,
eating so many Bassett's licorice all sorts, I had the shits for a whole week, so I left.
a van boy is a van boy. You ride along with the guy who's driving, and then you just make the hops. Is that what a van
I'm,
boy
yeah,
is?
I mean, I guess it must be because I don't think he learned how to drive until he was in the military.
Okay,
So yeah,
gotcha.
he must have just been hopping out, taking the boxes of sweets or whatever to the stores.
Sure, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
fun. Van boy.
Um, Evenings he played in local bands and then joined Tommy Brettle's New Ritz Revels, playing every week at St. Cyprian's Hall, Brockley. By this time, he'd found another day job as a work hand at the Chislehurst Laundry. Like his father, he started to enter talent contests and won a Bing Crosby singing contest. Now seriously practicing his trumpet, he was promoted to solo trumpet player. Back to the day job as a shop assistant in S. Straker's stationery shop on Queen Victoria Street, he was fired for unpunctuality. His next day job was as a stockroom assistant at Keith Prowse in Bond Street. It was soul destroying, and all that kept my sanity was playing the evenings with the New Ritz Revels. I started to croon with the band. Another day job was as a skilled labourer at the Woolwich Arsenal, while playing evenings on his illegally obtained Besson trumpet with the Harlem Club Band. He said he had started to earn good money. So here's the story of how the trumpet was illegally obtained.
All right.
When he was 19, Spike met the one true love that remained constant throughout his life in the window of a shop in Lewisham High Street. A gold-plated Besson trumpet priced totally beyond him. No problem. He had enough for a deposit and bought it, figuring the rest would come from his employer. His bosses disagreed. Spike was still playing the clubs, but his day job was with a wholesale tobacconist where he would wrap parcels of cigarettes and tobacco. It was conveniently cold in the warehouse, so he wore his overcoat and some of the cigarettes found his way into its pockets. Spike sold them on at a cut price, but was caught by the foreman and arrested. Leo had missed the drama of the theater and wasted no time in offering his services as an advocate. After several rehearsals at home to hone his act, he was ready to take center stage at the police court. As ever, the boring truth was disregarded. Theft? Nonsense. Entrepreneurial flair in a time of hardship. Look at him, he declared to the magistrates, pointing a finger at Spike. His crime was a love of music. He needed the money to buy a violin and study classical music, but he was so poor he could never, never afford one. His only way was to pilfer stockroom goods and sell them. This has afforded him a second-hand violin, which even now he is learning to play. Have pity on this boy. As a result of his actions, he could become a virtuoso. It was a triumphant performance. As Leo correctly reckoned, burgeoning classical violinists got more sympathy from magistrates than trumpeters. Spike was discharged and played his gold-plated trumpet in the Harlem Club Band, all because of an exciting lie.
Your Honor, I'm an artist. that lost decade of misdemeanors. I'm an artist, Your Honor. My counsel does. Even my counsel, don't listen to him. All right, he's a lawyer. I'm an artist. I'm reading that meme book right now that everybody's reading, Chaos, the Charles Manson murders.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Errol Morris made the documentary. It kind of goes around.
Yeah.
And yeah, Manson. I'm an artist.
I'm an artist.
I mean, he was. I mean, he nearly got a record contract with through the Beach Boys and everything. I mean, crazy. Yeah, we could cover him. Probably won't.
Oh, please, no.
Yeah, I don't think we will. That's a different show. I love that.
Another type of artistry.
Yeah, it's a different kind. We'll let the true crime chuds handle that stuff.
Yeah, I think there's probably enough of that.
Yeah, we're the art chuds. Yeah. So wait, so his father got up and said, Your Honor, my son didn't steal this. It was out of necessity. He needed this trumpet. They really did.
No, he needed this violin.
Oh, this violin.
Well, but he didn't steal a violin. Leo just said he stole a violin because he thought a classical musician would get more sympathy than a trumpeter.
Jeez. It's so funny. See, and this eccentricity carries even in front of the judge. That's very funny. Did they get away with it?
Yeah.
And I tell you what, in Britain and England, they if you could be very verbose, you could sort of talk your way around a lot of stuff, or at least you used to be able to. That seems to be that wouldn't play over here in the United States. I don't think.
I think they would have appreciated a good argument.
Sure. Yeah, they made an effort. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something it's almost like Dickens about all this. Yeah, very
Yeah.
fun. Dickensian.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, schools like Cambridge, very good school.
That's a good school.
That's a good school. Yeah, the students there will just like debate with each other for fun and take
Hmm.
up positions that they don't
Or
believe
it's
in at all,
Sure,
just to
sure. Yeah,
to
debate
argue it.
club. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, debate club.
And
Hmm.
but not even debate club, just in
Right.
general, just
Just to
conversations at a
just
party.
hanging out. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whew. Cool. That sounds really cool, guys. Yeah, lots of fun.
So unfortunately, this all got put on pause when Adolf Hitler came knocking. So I'm gonna go into detail on World War II in the After Dark. But in I will cover like a little bit of it just to mark the occasion, I guess. World War II was an incredibly significant occurrence in Spike Milligan's life, so much so that he wrote 7 memoirs on the topic. The first being Adolf Hitler, My Part in His Downfall, which he wrote in 1971. The second being Rommel, Gunner Who, in 1974. The third being Monty, His Part in My Victory, in 1976. The fourth being Mussolini, His Part in My Downfall, in 1978. The fifth being Where Have All the Bullets Gone in 1985, Goodbye Soldier in 1986, and Piecework in 1991. And
Whoa.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, they're all sort of like novella sized.
Yeah,
So
sure. But nevertheless, I mean, that is the defining event of the 20th century without a
yeah,
question. Yeah.
I think he kept a lot of diaries.
Well, he does seem to be interested in himself. I will say that.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
he's
That's
very
okay.
interested in himself.
No, I don't have a
I
problem with
mean,
that. Yeah.
he,
If
he
you
he's
could,
an interesting subject, so why not?
sure. Good.
Okay. So when World War II broke out, he was called up to the Royal Artillery as a signaller in the D Battery, later 19th Battery, 56th Heavy Regiment. The unit was equipped with the obsolete First World War era BL 9.2-inch howitzer and based in Bexhill on the south coast of England. Milligan describes training with these guns in part 2 of Adolf Hitler, My Part in His Downfall, claiming that during training, gun crews resorted to shouting bang in unison as they had no shells with which to practice. The unit was later re-equipped with the BL 7.2-inch howitzer and saw action as part of the First Army in the North African campaign, and then in the succeeding Italian campaign. Milligan was appointed Lance Bombardier and was about to be promoted to Bombardier when he was wounded in action in the Italian theater at the Battle of Monte Cassino. Subsequently hospitalized for a mortar wound to the right leg and shell shock, he was demoted by an unsympathetic commanding officer, identified in his war diaries as Major Evan Jumbo Jenkins, back to the gunner. After he recovered, Gunner Milligan joined an army dance band and reached the rank of sergeant. As soon as peace was declared in May 1945, he was posted to the central pool of artists whose role was to entertain the troops waiting for demobilization.
The central pool of artists.
Yeah.
I love this. We got to return to tradition. Bang.
Bang. One day he was practicing guitar in a rehearsal room when tall ex-gunner Bill Hall, a brilliant violinist, an actual violinist, invited him to form a trio with a double bass player Johnny Mugru. Spike accepted, reckoning they sounded like Le Hot Club de France, a famous Parisian jazz combo. It was when they were playing at the Officers Club in Naples that he was struck by one of the cabaret acts. Someone from Mars, Gunnar Seacom H, singer and lunatic who'd been pronounced loony after a direct hit from an 88mm gun in North Africa. He rushed on chattering, screaming, farting, sweat poured from him like a monsoon. Spike could not understand a word Harry said, and he thought he was a Polish comedian, although they had already met in North Africa. The Bill Hall trio was a great success, and on D-Mob, they were offered officer status if they would continue to play for the troops for another 6 months. They accepted, and Florence was able to tell the neighbors that her son was a banjo-playing officer. It was then that Spike developed his first manic act, which would... Oh, manic? Yeah, manic. Not maniac, it's manic. His first manic act, which would eventually lead to the Goon Show. A natural frontman, Spike would do the links between songs, and these quickly mutated into riffs with funny voices, then sketches with Bill and Jimmy playing a part. He did not tell jokes as such. But then Spike is famous for being the first comic who didn't need punchlines to make people laugh. They toured through Italy, and when they reached Naples, the Italian corps de ballet joined the show. They were thrilled to have women on board, and Spike was particularly keen on the prima ballerina, Maria Antonietta Pontani. 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 For months, Spike and Tony were
Nailed it.
inseparable. Yeah. and, and this is supposed to be one of the languages I'm good at. Pontani. For months, Spike and Tony were inseparable, and Norma says, I believe she was the love of his life. They spent an idyllic weekend in Capri and planned to marry. Spike wrote home with the good news, but his mother would have none of it. We don't want a foreigner in this family, she told him. Apparently, Spike accepted, which Norma never understood. There is no doubt he was in love with Tony and she with him, and it would have been in character for him to ignore his mother's opposition. By the time Norma knew Spike, he was someone who always did what he thought was right, regardless of anybody else's opinion. Tony married an Italian diplomat who was sympathetic to their friendship, and Spike flew to Rome to take her out. When her daughter moved to Paris, it became much easier for them to see each other. This continued until a couple of years before his death. So to kick off some stories about Tony and Spike, here's a little poem called Love Song. If I could write words like leaves on the autumn forest floor, what a bonfire my letters would make. If I could speak words of water, you would drown when I said, I love you.
Very true.
So, yeah, here he's a little...
Neat little poem. Just cozy.
Just a nice little
I mean, he's
little
not
poem.
Yeats. He's not Yeats, but I mean, it's sweet. Again, fellas, ladies, you can just do things. You can just write a poem.
Write poems or entire books of them.
Absolutely. Nobody will stop you.
Here's one of his memories of a time with Tony. Okay. Up on the Wörthersee Riviera, Tony and I hire a rowboat and take a packed lunch. I row to the middle of the lake. It's one of those boats with a lounging double seat in the stern, so we snog while the boat drifts and drifts and drifts. Let it drift forever, for we are lovers, and the hands of the clock stopped the moment we met. We live in a time capsule called now. We can only think of each other. It is young and true love. The waters lapped at the sides. Lake birds flew hither and thither to their secret places, and the day lay on us like a diaphanous dream. Wake up, the boat is leaking. Blast, yes, there's 3 inches of water in the bottom. So I row the love wagon back to the boathouse and point out to the Austrian man what has happened. He just laughed and gave us half our money back. We walked back down the dusty road and arrived home for tea. Tony is giggling because somehow I have managed to wet the seat of my trousers, which looks like a giant ink stain. I hang my shirt out to cover it, but that's wet as well. The hell with it. Wild poppies grow by the wayside. I pick some for Tony. Alas, the poor things start to die within a few minutes. Why can't we leave nature alone? Tony takes a photo of me. She wants me to turn my back to the camera. I refuse. And then here's another one from another time. I remember that as we sat outside eating, for no reason it started to rain. We retreat inside while a waiter rescues our food. The waiter is amusing. He apologizes for the rain and says, even though some has settled on the food, there'll be no extra charge. Seated inside, Tony suddenly says to me, you know, in 2 days you'll leave me. My mood changed. Was it that soon? I was so impervious to days that each one came as a shock. Why wasn't time timeless? Tony, I said, I'll come back as soon as I can and I'll write as much as I can. That's followed by us just looking at each other in silence. I miss you very much, Terry. She looks so small and helpless. I feel so small and helpless. I'll tell you what, we have some champagne, yes? She pauses reflectively. Okay, she says. The restaurant hasn't any champagne. Tedeschi hanno bevuto tutto, says the waiter. What do you think that means? The Germans drank it all.
Oh, no. Say it one more time.
Tedeschi hanno bevuto tutto.
Oh, I never would have guessed that. Okay. The Germans drank it all. Many such cases. Getting it in.
Getting it in. Would we like asti spumante? Yes, when in Rome. When midnight strikes in some campanile, we toast each other. We'd done so often before, but this time it's a little more meaningful. Our sand is running out. In the taxi back, I sit with my arm around her, her head on my shoulder. Sounds like a transplant. I hum her favorite tune, Valzer de Candelet. We tiptoe into the apartment, and I instinctively wait for my mother's voice. Where have you been at this time of the night? No, it's Signora Fontana asking, is that Tony? Yes. So good night.
Hmm. True
Um,
love.
true love. But yeah, no foreigners in the family. So,
Ah, right.
in 1946, the Bill Hall trio arrived back in Britain and toured the halls, earning £75 between them a week. Affluence indeed, when the average wage was about £5. But Spike was not satisfied. After a few months, he decided to go solo with his wild act. The parting was acrimonious. Bill said, I hope you never get another fucking job. Sure enough, the act flopped, and Spike joined another trio which traveled around Italy, but he still wanted to succeed in his own right and returned to England in 1948. He was doing his best, but it wasn't good enough. He said later to break into radio. It was then that he heard that the Polish comedian from the previous story, Harry Seacombe, was appearing at the Windmill in Soho. He's not actually a Polish comedian, by the way. He's a British guy. Spike just thought he was a Polish comedian.
All right.
Because he does this weird, like, Harry Seacombe's like quite a famous comedian. And he does these like funny voices that sound like nothing. It's just like sounds.
Huh. Okay.
It's very strange. It was very funny back in the day, apparently. um, so he was appearing at the Windmill in Soho. This theatre was the place for post-war talent. Alumni of the central pool of artists would try out their acts there between the more risque performances, including the famous female statues, nudes who were not deemed obscene so long as they did not move. Spike went along to see Harry, and then they caught up after the show, and he was introduced to another comic performer, Michael Bentine, who was also on the bill. The three became friends, and while Spike struggled to eke out a living, of an evening they started to hang out at the Grafton Arms in Sutton Ground, Westminster. The landlord, Jimmy Grafton, formerly a major, was very handsome and a tireless entrepreneur. He had taken over the pub but was struggling to write scripts and always had an eye for talent, becoming Harry Seacombe's agent. One night in the bar, after Spike had played piano while Harry sang, they had a few drinks and told stories. Jimmy heard some of Spike's stories and immediately asked if he would like to write with him for Derek Roy. Derek Roy was a comedian, and he had a BBC radio comedy show called Hip Hip Hoo Roy. Spike was not that enthused by Roy and thought he was unfunny. However, writing his show could mean a stepping stone to bigger things.
The guy with a show called Hip Hip Hoo Roy wasn't that funny? Shocking. And I say that as a pun appreciator. I love a good pun, but boy,
Not Hip Hip Hoo Roy.
no, not so much.
Not so much. Oh, Jimmy, I say, is it worth £10 script writing for Derek Roy, the man who kills 99% of all known jokes? Jimmy said, patience. It can lead to bigger things. I tell him I don't need bigger things. Mine are big enough. Ask any heavy plant operator. There could be a series, says Jimmy. What, of disasters? Roy is not funny. It'll put money in your shatteringly hollow account, he says. So when he's in the bar serving, I bang away at the jokes. I remember an early one. Man says to doctor, my wife thinks I'm mad because I prefer brown boots to black. Doctor says, how silly, I myself prefer brown boots to black. Man says, how do you like them, boiled or fried? now, now that's how a normal joke would end, not me. With me, the doctor says, I like mine boiled. My wife thinks I'm mad too. I think it's probably funnier when Spike tells it.
A lot of comedy is in the delivery. This is worse than the racism earlier, Abby. Now I need a disclaimer.
Crimes against comedy.
Crimes against comedy with Abby Lucas
trigger
and Kevin
warning.
Kautzman. Yeah,
Not
right.
funny.
Trigger warning. Not a funny person. No, but it is interesting too. Like I remember, I think it was on the Shakespeare episode, one of the two
Mm.
Shakespeare episodes we did, where either Brad or I, there was like a comedian, a comic actor in Shakespeare's day who could just like he would just peek his head out of from behind the curtain and roll his eyes, and they would die
Yeah.
laughing. Do you know what I mean? There's just something you can't. Funny is
I mean,
very, very hard to fake.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You, if you go on YouTube and you put on, there was one I was watching just before we started rolling on this. Michael Parkinson did a sort of interview show, and Harry Seacom was on the show, and it was filming in Australia, I think. And Spike Milligan comes on in one of those Australian hats with the corks on it to keep the flies out of your face, and
Mm.
then just starts like ad-libbing for like 10 minutes, and they were all in stitches. Like, I could not tell you what any of the jokes he made were,
Yeah.
but all of these sort of grown men were kind of like falling off their chairs.
Sure. Fun. I mean, and there's a very
Um,
particular kind of English humor that is
yeah.
you get it or you don't. That's for sure. Python is the best known example, and for whatever reason translates the best to the States over here. Oh, and then I
Right.
guess what Gervais did, although it's so mean spirited that they had to
Uh,
adapt it for the sort of
yeah.
Americans still believe in things. But yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm very curious how he would go on to influence the Python guys.
Well, we're about to come to that.
All right.
Jimmy, the pub owner slash co-writer, he organizes a night with the Goons, if they as they've decided to call themselves, which is Spike, Harry Seacom, and this Michael Bentine.
That's a word that has a new meaning now. They're Abby and Kevin in the Goon Cave here.
The Goon Cave. Apparently, the name for the Goons came from a character in Popeye.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, interesting. Hmm.
And I just also realized that I have skipped over why he got called Spike.
Ah,
He got the name during World War II
mhm.
because I think that the tall ones in the military would get called Spike, sort of like the tall,
Ah,
thin ones.
I
There,
see.
there were
Okay,
nicknames that kind of went around, and Spike stuck for Spike.
gotcha. Okay, so it's a military nickname. Okay,
Yeah, it's a little
I'll
funnier
allow it.
than Terrence.
Sure. Apparently, so listen to this. Alice the Goon is a fictional character in E.C. Segar's comic strip Thimble Theater, and in the Popeye cartoon series derived from it. Alice is an Amazonian giantess. The character is introduced as the slave and bodyguard of the sorceress Sea Hag. The Sea Hag has blackmailed Alice into service in exchange for the safety of Alice's child. Popeye helps Alice become the leader of a slave rebellion. Alice's role is loosely based on that of the rebel leader Spartacus in your amusing cartoon. Okay, so there you go. Alice the Goon.
Um, the Goons. Yeah, so Jimmy organizes a night with the Goons, as we've decided to call ourselves, Spike recalls. So one evening after hours at the pub, we have an ad lib session. Bentine starts the ball rolling. Gentlemen, now you know why I've called you here. No, we don't, we murmur. Very well, we've been besieged in this fort for, does anybody know? 40 days, says one. 50, says another. Any advance on 50? 70. Right, we've been besieged 40, 50, and 70 days. Gentlemen, you will synchronize watches. They all adjust their watches but never say a word. The phone supposedly rings. Seacom answers. Hello, Fort Agra. Hello. Just a minute. He holds his hand over the phone. Does a Mrs. Gladys Stokes live here? No, sorry, Mrs. Stokes doesn't live here. And apparently things like this just go on for hours. And they would make tapes of this. So they would ad lib for hours, and they would make these tapes. And Spike goes on to recall, I suppose it would only be a matter of time before someone in the BBC might use us. There was one enlightened producer ahead and in streets ahead and in perceiving things. Pat
Mhm.
Dixon, totally unrevered by the BBC, but directly responsible for giving us the break. Already, we had introduced the first comedy show on the new third program for unknown reasons, now called Radio 3. They can't leave they can't leave alone, can they? He does these little asides in his memoirs.
Hmm.
Using Harry Seacombe, Peter Sellers, Benny Hill. It was the first comedy show without an audience. I used to go and listen through the studio door. I was desperate to be given a break on as such on the media. It never did the three. It never did. The three, Seacombe, Sellers, Bentine, are all working and earning. If I hadn't written myself into the Goon Show, I'd never have been heard of. Um, so the Goon Show was unlike anything British audiences had ever heard before. Launched in 1951 on the BBC Home Service, it brought together Spike Milligan, Peter Sellers, Seacombe, and initially Michael Bentine in a half-hour radio comedy that shredded the polite constraints of post-war British humour. It was chaotic, surreal, and subversively intelligent, bending slapstick, wordplay, and audio anarchy. The show threw logic out the window, replacing traditional plot structure with dreamlike digressions and characters who gleefully broke the fourth wall, sometimes mid-sentence. The four men clicked immediately. It was always a relief to get away from the theatre and join in the revels at Grafton's on a Sunday night, said Seacombe years later. They took to calling themselves the Goons and started recording their pub-going-ons with a Picasgill aluminum disc recorder. BBC producer Pat Dixon heard a recording and took an interest in the group. He pressed the BBC for a long-term contract with the gang, knowing it would secure Sellers for more than just seasonal work, something for which the BBC had been aiming. The BBC acquiesced and ordered an initial series, though without much enthusiasm. Milligan as the chief writer was the show's driving force, with the regular collaboration of other writers, including Larry Stevens, contributing around 140 episodes, Eric Sykes, who co-wrote most of the episodes in Series 5, Maurice Wiltshire, and John Antrobus. Week after week, Milligan wrote most of the scripts, often alone and under extreme pressure while juggling the throes of bipolar disorder. His comedy was anarchic but precise, a language of nonsense that concealed biting satire. From absurd Cold War references to thinly veiled critiques of the British class system, the Goon Show operated like a Trojan horse, wild and silly on the outside, politically and psychologically explosive underneath. The characters were grotesque caricatures drawn from the music hall's barracks and Milligan's own subconscious. There was the high-pitched Blue Bottle, the idiotic Eccles, the pompous Major Bloodknock, and the eternally suffering Nettie Seagoon, often voiced by Seacombe. Sellers showed his vocal range with uncanny impressions, while Milligan's own characters often veered closest to the brink of madness. The catchphrases, you rotten swine, you, or what time is it, Eccles, became national earworms. Technically, the show was groundbreaking. It used elaborate sound effects, bombs, goats, engines, doors, to create entire imaginary worlds. It was theatre of the mind, but in Milligan's hands, that mind was a carnival. The BBC engineers reportedly hated working on the show at first, finding the scripts indecipherable and the demands ludicrous. Over time, they too became converts, helping to build the audio chaos into something iconic. Throughout its history, each episode of The Goon Show, which usually ran just under 30 minutes, was essentially structured as a comedy variety program consisting of scripted comedy segments alternating with musical interludes. It was in its use of pre-recorded and live sound effects that The Goon Show broke the most new ground. Part of the problem was that not even Milligan knew how to capture electronically the peculiar sounds that came alive in his head. He just knew when it had not yet happened. An example of this comes from an often cited story of Milligan filling his two socks with custard in the Camden Theatre canteen in an attempt to achieve a squelching effect. Milligan asked the BBC canteen ladies to make some custard. They thought he must have some stomach trouble, so lovingly made him a fresh custard, which he accepted with thanks and immediately poured into his sock, much to their horror. Seacombe recalled, back in the studio, Spike had already placed a sheet of 3-ply near the microphone. One after the other, he swung them around his head and against the wood, but failed to produce the sound effect he was seeking. So a sock full of custard and no sound effect. Seacombe noted...
There's sulfur and now custard. There's a foot thing going on here.
It's just like latent foot thing. Seacom noted that Spike used to drive the studio managers mad with his insistence on getting the sound effects he wanted. In the beginning, when the program was recorded on disc, it was extremely difficult to achieve the right sound effect. There were, I think, four turntables on the go simultaneously, with different sounds being played on each. Chickens clucking, Big Ben striking, donkeys braying, massive explosions, ship sirens, all happening at once. It was only when tape came into use that Spike felt really happy with the effects. An FX instruction in one script read, sound effect of two lions walking away, bumping against each other. If you can't get two lions, two hippos will do. Over time, the sound engineers became increasingly adept at translating the script into desired sounds, assisting from the late 1950s onwards by specialists in the BBC's newly formed radiophonic workshop. Milligan's relationship with BBC managers preparing for the recording of episodes was often acrimonious and resulted in rows, and Milligan later agreed that he was a diva during this time, adding, I was trying to shake the BBC out of its apathy. Sound effects were a knock on the door and tramps on gravel, and that was it, and I tried to transform it. During this time, Spike's...
and let me,
Sorry.
maybe for people who don't know, I mean, maybe it's worth stating, how many channels are there to listen to? Probably not that many. And if you have a popular show, you're like one of the only things that's on the air. It's like appointment listening. You're talking about millions of people hearing your show because there's nothing else. And the culture of radio in the UK is different from over here. Somehow. It's much more national.
Yeah, I mean, we've got like long-running audio dramas that are starting to be cancelled, and it causes an uproar. People are not happy about that.
Sure. Well, we're making radio right now. Old-timey radio here on Art of Dark.
Old-timey radio.
Maybe we need more catchphrases.
Yeah,
And
catchphrases, sound effects.
We need more sound effects. We need a Foley artist.
I opt to not do the sound effects. It is my most hated part of editing.
You hate doing it.
Because trying to find the right sound effect is hard.
It is.
And
yes,
the way sound effects are described is also often misleading because it's very hard to describe some things that you are hearing.
I'm going to make a promise to the Art of Darkness listeners. We will never add sound effects to Art of Darkness. Swooshes and bangs, and it's never happened.
Yeah.
So rest assured, the show is the show.
I remember doing a film once, and there was the sound designer was looking for like a tension sound effect, like that you would have in a horror or something. But it was a comedy that we were making, so it was like subverting whatever was on the screen. And it was that the sound effect was called something like backwards spiders.
Ugh.
Yeah. But it was this like kind of noise.
Yeah. Backwards spiders. Okay. Kind of like forward spiders. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Cool. So he has a breakout success with this. And of course, Peter Sellers, the famous actor, Dr. Strangelove, all of that. Fun.
And one of Spike's very close friends for the entirety of his life.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. During the time that they were making the Goon Show, Spike's parents had grown tired of the cold and grey and immigrated with his brother Desmond to Woy Woy in New South Wales, Australia. Spike was effectively homeless until Peter Sellers took him home to meet his parents, Peg and Bill, in Finchley. They headed off and Spike moved into their attic, sleeping on an airbed. One night, Pete took Spike to meet his girlfriend, Anne Howe. On the way, they picked up June Marlowe, Anne's best friend, and Spike fell in love. From his book, The Family Album, an Illustrated Autobiography, 1952. On the 26th of January, June Marlowe and I were married. We were very happy together, but eventually the strain I was under in writing The Goon Show would tear us apart. There were constant battles with the BBC. We did a whole spectrum of voices on the show. Peter could do anything from a dustman to the Queen, but the BBC didn't like us doing voices like General Montgomery, Churchill, or the Queen. They only wanted jokes like, I used to play the Palladium. Yes, I've never heard it played better.
Oh.
Spike and June's first daughter, Laura, was born in 1952, and the distraction of a baby in the house led to Spike finding an office from which to write his scripts from. Um, he would say, I worked a long day, leaving home at 9 a.m. in the morning and working until 10 or 11 at night. Sometimes I worked through the night. I had to work long hours to make the scripts as good as I could. When I got home, June would have left out a meal for me to warm up. I had difficulty sleeping, and I was seen by a stupid doctor who gave me sleeping pills. You name him, I've taken him. Audience figures grew rapidly from around 370,000 to nearly 2 million by the end of the 17th show.
That's what I'm saying. 17 episodes, 2 million listeners.
And that's just the first season.
Crazy. Different world now.
Very different world. No recordings of any episode of this series are known to have survived. The BBC commissioned a second series, and a number of other changes occurred. Well, I guess they were, if the first series was pre-tape, they would have had to have been recorded on like vinyl or something.
Out of my wheelhouse. No idea. That's crazy that they don't have it.
The first season, they
Shocking.
just don't have it. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
The BBC commissioned a second series, and a number of other changes occurred. The musical interludes were shortened, and Max Geldray joined the lineup. Peter Eaton from the BBC's drama department replaced Dennis Main Wilson as the producer. Eaton brought stricter discipline to the show's production. He was also an expert at sound effects and microphone technique, ensuring the show became a far more dynamic listening experience. However, a few episode into the series, Milligan suffered a major nervous breakdown. This life put a great strain on me and my marriage with a wonderful wife, June. I must have behaved impossibly. It was all leading up to a breakup. In December, I was writing the third series of the Goon shows when I finally broke down. If anybody wants to know what down is, ask me. I've been there. The doctor who was treating me realized that I was too much for him to handle and had me taken to St. Luke's Psychiatric Hospital in Muswell Hill in London. It's just up the road. As I got out of the ambulance, there was a cat sitting on the doorstep. I stroked it. The contact with fur was soothing. They put me in a room next to a noisy, bloody kitchen. I screamed, "Get me out of here!" A doctor gave me a jab of something, and in 10 seconds I was unconscious. I lay there in a deep sleep for 14 days. They brought me round occasionally to drink some liquid food. I grew a dark brown beard, and I remember one nurse saying, "He looks like our Lord." When I was half awake, I had hallucinations. Hanging from the ceiling were halves of coat hangers. There was a live lion on top of the cupboard. There came a stream of silver materializing in the doorway opposite into a lady with black ribbons around her hair, which hung down to her shoulders. The trauma of my childhood bedwetting haunted me, and even though I couldn't pass any urine, I'd keep on trying, and still unconscious. The result, a prolapse. One good thing came from all of this. I was a heavy smoker, and being unconscious for 2 weeks had abated the craving. A nurse would sit with me all night. She smoked. I smelled it. Deep down, I wanted to give up, and now was the chance. I took it. I've never really smoked since. June came to visit. She looked terrible with worrying about the breadwinner having come to a sudden halt.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure in show business. It is. It's not a normal type of career. And I've never had 2 million listeners, but maybe one day. But I mean, that's a tremendous amount of pressure. And if you're not built for it, and then deadlines, got to be funny.
Yeah, got to be funny every week.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's a lot.
Got to come up with all those sound effects.
Sure, absolutely.
In 1953, he said, "By February, I was well enough to leave the hospital, but still very shaky. I went back to the slog of writing, which I faithfully did, although the payment was very small. For my acting part in the show, I think I got £12, and for writing, I got 25. As Sellers and Seacombe were big names, they got £100 a week. Ultimately, I was paid 100 as well, and with repeats, 200. A lot of money. 200. That must have hurt him." By now, Michael Bentine had left the Goons. He was an extraordinary character who told the most extraordinary stories. He once told me that his mother had levitated from the ground across the dining room table and settled on the other side. One night, when we were appearing at a show in Birmingham, I asked him, as he claimed to be a mathematician, could he give me the formula for the atomic bomb? He took out a lipstick and covered the mirror in the dressing room with with Pythagoras, finishing off at the bottom on the right-hand side with, "There, this is the formula for the atomic bomb." Unfortunately, there was a Professor Penny in the audience that night. I happened to know him, and he came into the dressing room and looked at the mirror. I asked him what it was, and he said, "That's a load of bollocks." I told Michael, and he said, "Of course it is. You don't think I would give away the secret of the atomic bomb to you in a dressing room in Birmingham, do you?"
Fun.
In 1954, on the 17th of September, we had a second child, Sean Patrick. Joy, what a joy, a boy, at least one successor to my name. We bought a Maltese puppy and called him Baggage. He was scruffy but cute. Also scruffy but cute was the 1929 Austin soft top Tourer, which I bought from Peter Sellers for £300. In 1955, we bought on a mortgage 127 Holden Road, Finchley. It had a large garden with a stream at the bottom. That summer, June took Laura and Sean on holiday in the car, by now named Little Min. Little Min. I couldn't go as I was still working hard to deliver a complete Goon Show script once a week.
Yeah, a complete script once a week. Whew.
Yeah.
I mean, and now you're in it too. And now, again, the expectations, and we need this show, and it's got to be funny. And then they're sounds like they're doing like live performances too. So now they're household names.
Yeah, they're recording it live. They've got an audience in front of them, and
oh wow, okay, yeah, so much pressure.
yeah.
Crazy. Show business, baby. I do like the podcast format where we get to kind of cheat and we just hide away in our little holes and just do it on our own time. We try to deliver. I think we deliver, right? We're gonna, yeah. But it's something different doing it in front of an audience and every week. And then the BBC is like this Goliath hovering behind you.
Yeah, and they already don't like you.
Right. They already, think you're right.
They're just there because Peter Sellers likes you for some reason, and Harry
Sure.
Seacombe. And
Sure. And the show's popular, so how do you...
the show's popular, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Another section from the book, Depression and How to Survive It. I have got so low that I have asked to be hospitalized and for deep narcosis, sleep. I cannot stand being awake. The pain is too much. I have had thoughts of suicide. I get depressed that I am old. Something has happened to me. This vital spark has stopped burning. I go to a dinner table now and I don't say a word, just sit there like a dodo. Normally, I am the center of attention, keep the conversation going. So that is depressing in itself. It's like another person taking over, very strange. The most important thing I say is, "Good evening," and then I go quiet and other people will talk. It must be a bit unbalanced at the table with me just sitting there dead silent. I love my fellow man, but he's a two-faced bastard. I'm sorry for him principally because he can't change. He's reached the end of the line, and going to the moon smacks of "I climbed the tree first, so there. Aren't I in a grim mood?"
That's some serious depression. I mean, if you're asking to be hospitalized and knocked out, that's quite serious. Wow. Okay. Manic is the word, right? High,
Yeah,
low.
he's definitely got severe bipolar.
Bipolar. Okay.
Yeah. Peter Sellers, didn't understand mental illness. He kept coming to the flat all the time, and his phone had broken down and he wanted to use mine at this time they were living in the same building, I think.
Sure.
And I couldn't stand the noise. I said, "Tell him to stop it." He said, "Oh, tell him not to be so silly." So I got a potato knife from the kitchen. I had been wanting to get into hospital and I felt, why won't they put me in hospital? I thought if I get a knife and I try to kill him, they'll put me somewhere. And I did. I went to attack him with a knife. I didn't mean to kill him, but I thought they will hospitalize me. They took me away to a hospital and put me under deep narcosis.
With a potato knife going after Peter Sellers.
Peter Sellers.
You're going to flay him with a potato knife. That's a very funny picture.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's like, I need to go to the hospital. I will attempt to kill Peter Sellers with a potato knife.
When the BBC is driving you insane, the NHS is ready. The National Health is ready to pick you up and take care of you, but you have to try to murder one of your co-hosts with a
Yeah.
potato knife. I hope you all are taking notes.
Murder
I know a
murder
lot.
one of the most famous men in Britain with a potato knife.
I know we have a lot of fellow podcasters listen to us, so just I hope you all are taking notes here.
He goes on to say, I plowed on without any smile on my face through these goon shows. I never laughed. I knew that's funny, that's a joke, but I wouldn't laugh at it when I wrote it. I was very
Mm,
grim, very depressed.
wow.
Um, by 1960, the Goon Show ended its regular run, but its impact was seismic. Uh, on the influence of the Goons, Eric Sykes wrote that in the post-World War II years, other shows came along, but the House of Comedy needed electricity. Then out of the blue, the Goons, Spike Milligan, simply blew the roof off and lit the whole place with sunshine. At a cursory glance, the Goon Show was merely quick-fire delivery of extremely funny lines mouthed by eccentric characters. But this was only the froth. The Goon Show uh, with the Goon Show, Spike was unknowingly portraying every facet of the British psyche. John Cleese notes that in comedy there are a very small number of defining moments when somebody comes along and genuinely creates a breakthrough, takes us into territory where nobody has been before. The only
Mm.
experiences to which I can compare my own discovery of the Goons are going to see N.F. Simpson's play One Way Pendulum, or later on hearing Peter Cook for the first time. They were just light years ahead of everyone else. The Goons made a considerable impact on the humor of the Beatles, especially John Lennon. On the 30th of September
I knew
1973,
this.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, this came up. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it came up on the Lennon episode. This is where I had heard of it before, the Goon Show. Yeah.
Yeah. On the 30th of September 1973, Lennon reviewed the book The Goon Show scripts for the New York Times. He wrote, I was 12 when The Goon Show first hit me, 16 when they finished me. Their humor was the only proof that the world was insane. One of my earlier efforts at writing was a newspaper called The Daily Howl. I would write it at night and then take it into school and read it aloud to my friends. Looking at it now, it seems strangely similar to The Goon Show. Lennon also noted that George Martin, the Beatles' longtime producer, had previously made records with both Spike Milligan and Peter Sellers. The Goons were popular among the British royalty, particularly with Prince Charles, who would often mimic the voices of the characters. Prince Philip and Princess Anne attended the recording of the last Goon Show of all in 1972. Charles was unable to do so due to naval duties, but sent a telegram to the cast. Charles wrote an introduction to the book More Goon Show Scripts in 1973 and became patron of the Goon Show Preservation Society in 1998. The show also impacted Spike's first marriage for the worse. Seela, Spike and June's second daughter, was born in 1956, but things had gotten so bad that June left in 1959 with the children and moved in with a porter from Covent Garden Market. Full-on fatherhood was then very much thrust upon Spike in the early 60s when he and June divorced in 1960 and Spike was awarded full custody of their three children, Laura, Sean, and Seela, then aged 9, 6, and 4. At least he could remain in the family home at 127 Holden Road in Finchley, one of the few constants in his life. It was a spacious Edwardian house in a quiet tree-lined street, and he became the driving force in the Finchley Society, which he co-founded in 1971 with the aim of preserving the dignity and tranquility of the district. The year Spike met June was one which marked the beginning of a more lasting relationship. In 1951, while Eric Syke was in hospital being treated for the first signs of ear trouble, he heard Crazy People on the radio, which was what the Goons were first called before it got renamed to be The Goon Show. The writers were unknown to him. I thought the material was the funniest I'd heard for some time, and I wrote them a letter saying so, with a few pointers to how I thought it could be made even better, he recalled. By that time, Eric was a hugely successful writer and performer, as well as writing for Frankie Howard and with Sid Collin for Peter Brough as Archie Andrews, and then for Tony Hancock, and later for Tony Hancock. He wrote for American comics appearing at the London Palladium and topped the bill there in his own right. The young writers were thrilled to hear from him. A couple of days later, Eric was propped up in bed in his private room at the hospital. Two faces peered at me through a window in the corridor, Spike and Larry. They were so grateful I'd written to them and thanked me. Later that year, Spike visited Eric in his one-room office at Longridge Road, Earl's Court. He was bursting with ideas, couldn't keep still. He said his mind was so busy inventing them, he hardly had time to sleep. Said Eric. We hit it off and decided to share an office. Eric found rooms to rent 5 flights above a greengrocer's shop at 137 Uxbridge Road, Shepherd's Bush, and they moved in. The collaboration was fun from the start, though there were a few obstacles, particularly because rationing was not over. At that time, said Eric, oranges were still in short supply, and when a shipment came in, there was always a queue outside the shop. We had to wait with them until they were all sold before we could get into the office to go to work. Eric and Spike got on extremely well because they were both idealists. An idea they had for a cooperative with writers working alongside performers on producing scripts for their own use at last came to fruition in the early 50s. Spike was more of a dreamer, attracted by the vision of the artists working in collective harmony. Eric told me that Spike helped to get told Norma that Spike helped to get the project off the ground, and he made sure it worked in practice. They formed ALS, and word soon got around amongst budding writers that it was worth sending them material to get advice or maybe more if they were good enough. ALS worked very simply. We would just do our own thing, said Eric, but subscribe to a fund that would be there when one of us hit a fallow period. There were several rooms, so we invited two young chaps who were just beginning to get the odd success. And as they became more successful, ALS found better offices at Cumberland House on Kensington High Street. Then Eric and Spike discovered Number 9, which is an office building that they would be in for many decades. Each bought a quarter with Alan and Ray, the two other chaps, and ALS moved in at the beginning of 1962. So yeah, they started this sort of like writers and performers collective that would that everyone would pay into, and it would continue to pay all of them when people were in tough periods or rich periods.
All right, so sort of like an economic model, almost like a little mini union, or he's putting his communism to work.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having a collective. No problem.
Yeah.
I mean, they're trying to get paid.
They're trying to get paid, and they're often working on things together. I think, I said earlier that Eric Sykes had written many of the episodes of The Goon Show, particularly while Spike was in hospital.
Understood. Okay, fun.
In 1961, Spike was cast in a Second World War film, Invasion Quartet, and fell for one of the extras, Patricia Ridgway, who everyone knew as Patty.
Extras?
Yeah.
He needs a better agent.
Well, at the moment, he doesn't have one.
Well, there it is. There's your first mistake. He's a romantic.
He is a romantic. She was statuesque, very good looking, but with a weight problem she battled all her life. Spike recounted how he sighed when he first saw her on set. Oh, look at those legs. I think he was a bit of a leg man. Legs come up quite a bit in...
They're attached to the feet.
Yeah,
you don't
it's a
hear about
foot thing.
Hear about a leg man much anymore, but you could be a leg man.
No, I like it used to be more common you would hear about this, or maybe that's just what we were allowed to hear.
Right?
You could hear about.
Yeah, now it's been reduced to things like personality and earning potential.
He asked her out to dinner, and the attraction was immediate. When she went on to appear as a nun in The Sound of Music, Spike was bewitched by her lovely voice and proposed. She was from a very middle-class Yorkshire family, her father a director of Monsanto. They married in Yorkshire in June the following year, with the Beatles producer George Martin as best man and Spike's 3 children in attendance. By the way, Peter Sellers was his best man at his first wedding.
Oh, okay. All right.
Just FYI.
Hmm.
Um, but the dignity of the proceedings was destroyed when, as he stood at the altar with his bride, Spike put on a big black mustache and turned around. The congregation tittered, but Patty's father was appalled. Although Spike and Patty loved each other, their temperaments clashed. Perhaps their first disagreement occurred shortly after they were married, when she insisted that his children should go to private school, which he considered very Victorian. But she won, and Laura went to a convent as a weekly boarder, and Sean to a local private school. Soon more rifts occurred. Spike would tell Norma that there were moments of great happiness, but terrible rows. They were like two pieces of sandpaper rubbing against each other. Both had tempers, and Patty could be very forceful and stubborn, and with Spike's volatility, the combination was lethal. Result, rows, passionate reconciliations, and philandering by Spike. A lot of philandering.
Yeah, Spike's he's eccentric, but he's also a little bit of a cliche.
He is a
Uh,
little bit of a
a
cliche.
little bit. He's checking boxes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
As a little aside, around this time, he became stateless or almost became stateless. He had a bust up with the British government when passport regulations changed in 1962, and his Indian birth and Irish father denied him an automatic transfer to a British passport. Instead, he
Oh.
became technically stateless. As an
Huh.
ex-soldier, he obstinately, but by his rights logically, refused to swear the oath of allegiance necessary to gain a new British passport on the grounds that he had shown enough loyalty to the crown by fighting for the country. Instead,
Hmm.
he obtained an Irish passport and began a love-hate relationship with the English. Later, Prince Charles tried to persuade Spike to take the oath, pointing out that he had to swear his allegiance to the Queen. And Spike said, "Yes, but she's your mother." That he had to swear the allegiance to the Queen.
Ah,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. But she's your mother. That's
She's your
very, very,
mother.
very funny. I don't. Yeah, you have literal royalty saying, "Why don't you just swear allegiance to our family?" What's wrong with you? Yeah, fun.
I'm Irish.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Enough said. Yeah, yeah, fun. Very interesting.
After the Goon Show ended, Harry and Peter had gone off to have successful acting careers while things got a little more quiet for Spike. And during the 60s and 70s, he began to pivot to the theater,
The theater.
amongst other things. So he yes, Bernard Miles gave Milligan his first straight acting role as Ben Gunn in the Mermaid Theatre production of Treasure Island. Miles described Milligan as a man of quite extraordinary talents, a visionary who is out there alone, denied the usual contact simply because he is so different he can't always communicate with his own species.
Hmm.
Treasure Island played twice daily through the winter of 1961 to 62, so it's sort of a pantomime, but not quite. And was an annual production at the Mermaid Theatre for some years. In the 1968 production, Barry Humphries played the role of Long John Silver alongside William Rushton as Squire Trelawney and Milligan as Ben Gunn. To Humphries, Milligan's best performance must surely have been as Ben Gunn. Milligan stole the show every night in makeup which took at least an hour to apply. His appearance on stage always brought a roar of delight from the kids in the audience, and Spike had soon left the text far behind as he went off into a riff of sublime absurdity.
Actors love when other actors go off book, go off script.
Mhm.
Yeah, people love that. Mhm.
Maybe not writers.
Just say the words in the correct order every night. No, that's cool. So he's doing like improv and things on stage twice a day
Yeah.
too. I mean, this is like working man's theater. This is like paying the bills doing theater. This is not.
Well,
Yeah.
and he would so Treasure Island would go on for like decades every winter. So every winter it was getting done. and it would cause these arguments between Spike and his manager Norma later on in like the 70s and 80s, because he was still getting paid the same rates he was getting in the 60s, and
Mm,
she's like, she's like, this Bernard guy is not destitute, like he can afford to pay you better rates, but Spike wouldn't hear of it because Bernard had given him his break
mm,
after the Goon Show, so he felt indebted to him in a way,
I see.
and so continued to take these paltry sums to do the theater
Hmm.
every winter
Sure. Fun.
for a very long time, the same show. So
Yeah,
in
amazing.
1961 to 1962, during the long pauses between the matinee and the evening show of Treasure Island, Milligan began to talk to Miles about the idea that he and John Antrobus were exploring of a dramatized post-nuclear world. This became the one-act play The Bed-Sitting Room, which Milligan co-wrote with John Antrobus, and it premiered at the Marlowe Theatre, Canterbury on the 12th of February 1962. It was adapted into a longer play and staged by Miles at London's Mermaid Theatre, making its debut on the 31st of January 1963. It was a critical and commercial success and was revived in 1967 with a provincial tour before opening at London's Savile Theatre on the 3rd of May 1967. Richard Lester later directed a film version, which was released in 1969. So that was his second play. And then Milligan continued to seek out more serious material. He had read Ivan Goncharov's Oblomov, and felt a kinship with the title character who declines to leave his bed to face the world.
Ah,
According to another biography of Milligan, which I haven't read, Milligan's fans and the theatrical world in general found it hard to believe that he was to appear in a straight play. He refused to be serious when questioned about his motives. In the story, Oblomov decides to spend his life in bed. Spike decided to identify with his character and told disbelieving reporters that he thought it would be a nice, comfortable rest for him. The first preview was the 6th of October, 1964. During this performance, Milligan was struck by stage fright and forgot nearly all of his lines. He
oh
quickly
no.
began he quickly began making up things to say to the cast, turning the drama into an impromptu improv session. Noticing that a drama critic who had given rave reviews to Milligan's other stage comedies was in the audience, Milligan ended the first performance by shouting, "Thank God Milton Schulman's in." The play was savaged in the theatrical press.
Uh,
However, Oblomov's producers had booked the play into the Lyric for 3 weeks. Anxious to recoup their investment by any means, they gave Milligan carte blanche on stage. Milligan's antics included starting the play while sitting in the audience, yelling for his castmates to entertain him. Another night, he wore a false arm that fell out of his sleeve when his co-star Ian Flintoff, playing Oblomov's doctor, shook Milligan's hand. When Flintoff complained to Bill Kerr, a longtime friend of Milligan, that Spike was making a mockery of their hard work, Kerr replied, "We have to put up with all the shit, mate, because it pays the rent." Joan Green,
there's a very, very good reason people don't have stopped producing plays. It's a
yeah.
great way to hemorrhage money, right?
hmm
And there is a tremendous amount of risk involved for potentially not a lot of reward. It's a very, yes, you might have a hit on your hands, but you might also have a bomb. And there are
Yeah.
so many factors that come together to make it work. And if your lead forgets his lines on press night, you're good
He just
game.
starts making up his own.
Yep.
Um, Joan Greenwood, who played Olga, later recalled that her husband, Andre Morrill, thought the first performance was so appalling that they should get Greenwood out of her
Oh,
contract. Nobody seemed at all comfortable in their roles, and the audience began to hoot with laughter when Milligan's slipper inadvertently went spinning across the stage into the stalls. That was the end of Spike's playing straight. The audience demanded a clown, so he became a clown. The play continued running as an improv comedy. The decision soon caused it to break all box office records at the Lyric. After 5 weeks, it was rechristened Son of Oblomov and moved on December the 2nd, 1964 to the Comedy Theatre in the West End. It would run there for a total of 559 performances.
So he gets a West End transfer because he forgets his lines and they turn it into an improv show. This
Yeah.
guy's a wizard. That is some just pure charismatic wizard shit.
Mhm.
Wow.
On the 22nd of April, 1965, Queen Elizabeth and her family attended as part of her 39th birthday celebration. Just after the curtain rose, a group of four latecomers attempted to slink into their seats directly in front of the royal family. Milligan immediately shouted, "Turn up the house lights, start everything again." He pointed to the blushing foursome and cried, "That's cost you your knighthood." Then, noticing that Peter Sellers was seated in between Prince Charles and Princess Margaret, Milligan asked in a loud voice, "Is there a Sellers in the house?" Sellers immediately shouted, "Yes." Milligan launched into a vaudeville routine about Prince Philip's suspenders, with Sellers participating from his seat with the royals. Milligan gave a high kick, lobbing one of his bedroom slippers at Sellers, only just missing Prince Philip's head.
Oy, oy,
Once
oy.
back in bed with his co-star Joan Greenwood, Milligan spent the rest of the performance poking fun at the Queen for bringing her son to such a racy play. The play ended with Milligan unsheathing a katana on stage and asking the Queen to knight him for his efforts that night. She declined. The performance ran 45 minutes over its scheduled ending. Prince Charles reportedly saw the play 5 times.
That's great. Love it. Well,
Um,
if you forget your lines, I guess just start doing improv and mocking
you can
royalty.
just do things, as you
You could
said
just do
earlier.
things, bros. Wow. Yeah, what a powerhouse.
Yeah.
That he sounds like he's just that manic energy is kind
Mhm.
of it's like a bites him in the ass at a certain point, but he must have been just like a fusion reactor in terms of the performance. Probably one of these guys who gets an audience in front of him and just goes off.
He just goes off. Yeah.
Yeah,
Certainly
cool.
not on his meds. Um,
Mm. Kanye's
Spike.
having a bit of a goon
Oh,
show right
yeah,
now. Holy shit. Let's just say that. I gotta turn notifications off. Because
yeah.
there were a
I
couple
saw
nights
a
ago where he
roundup of a few tweets and was just
whoa.
like, okay, that's enough internet for today.
I mean, he said he doesn't even like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and I know he's trolling. But he
Oh,
said he
yeah,
hates
he's
that
trolling. He's
album. Yeah, he's trolling. He's got to
yeah.
be trolling.
I mean,
Jeez.
what's his favorite album then?
I don't know, but he said there are two songs he likes on Fantasy, and then three he likes on Yeezus. Uh, anyway, it's a lot. But yeah, fun. Yeah, this guy is great. I really like Spike Milligan, and the John Lennon connection is that's where
Yeah,
I had heard about this Goon Show, and I think I probably had heard about it with Peter Sellers. We have to do Peter Sellers too at one point.
yeah. He had a very fascinating life.
Very fascinating life. Yeah, cool. All right, good.
All right. So the TV thing came along at some point. Spike made several forays into television as a writer-performer, in addition to his many guest appearances on interview variety and sketch comedy shows. The Idiot Weekly Price 2D of 1956, starring Peter Sellers, was the first attempt to translate Goons humor to TV. It was followed by a show called Fred and Son of Fred, both made during 1956 and directed by Richard Lester, who went on to work with the Beatles. During a visit to Australia in 1958, a similar special was made for the Australian Broadcasting Commission, The Gladys Half Hour, which also featured local actors Ray Barrett and John Bluthal, who would appear in several later Milligan projects. In 1961, Milligan co-wrote 2 episodes of the popular sitcom Sykes Anna, co-starring Sykes and Hattie Jacques, and the one-off Spike Milligan offers a series of unrelated incidents at current market value. The 15-minute series The Goons in 1963 was the next attempt to transplant the Goons to television, this time using puppet versions of the familiar characters. The initial intention was to visualize original recordings of the 1950s Goon Show episodes, but this proved difficult because of the rapid-fire dialogue and was ultimately frustrated by the BBC's refusal to allow the original audio to be used. 1966 marked the beginning of one of the most important relationships of Spike's career and life. Norma Farnes walked into number 9 on the 22nd of August 1966, intending to stick it out as a secretary for 3 months before trying to move into television production. She ended up staying for just as many decades. Moving up from secretary, she would stick by Spike through the years, becoming his manager and then also agent, as well as the director of Spike Milligan Productions. Eric Sykes would say Spike had 3 wives who knew the outside view, but Norma knew what went on inside the lad. When the spotlight was on him and the audience and the applause prolonged, Norma would be in the shadows, happy for the lad. But in the many instances of trouble, she would be the foursquare in front of him, deflecting the flak and the bullets, pouring oil over the troubled waters until the next time. Spike's mental health was extremely fragile during the 60s and 70s, and it was Norma who was often left to pick up the pieces, as Spike would withdraw to his office at number 9 during depressive episodes rather than go home. He could switch from euphoria to deep dismay in a second, remembers Norma. After touring with the Bed Sitting Room, he was heaped with praise from every quarter. In an interview, director Peter Brook pronounced him a free genius. Spike Milligan is the greatest of all theater artists of our time.
Wow.
Peter
Brook?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No slouch. If anybody's interested in theater, you got to read The Empty Space, Peter Brook.
Spike returned to the office in a buoyant mood. One day he said he wanted to show me his handiwork in Kensington Gardens. We'll look at the Elfin Oak, walk through the park, and have lunch at Futong in Kensington High Street. He was very proud of the Elfin Oak, for without his efforts it would have disintegrated. It was a 600-year-old tree in Richmond Park which had been carved by a sculptor, Ivor Innes, in 1911, before being uprooted and moved to Kensington Gardens 19 years later, when his wife Elsie published a children's book, The Elfin Oak of Kensington Gardens. Innes maintained the Elfin Oak until he died in the 50s. Spike was fascinated by elves, goblins, and fairies, and had been held enthralled by the book as a child.
How did I already know? I already knew that. Somehow I knew that.
In 1964, he took his daughter Laura to see the tree and found it very neglected. The delicate carved figures all chipped and peeling. Laura was disappointed. "Daddy," she said, "it was a pity someone can't mend it." That was all Spike needed to spur him into action. He recruited a team of helpers, persuaded Rentokil to preserve the tree, and British Paints to provide the waterproof paint. The restoration was a labor of love, and now he wanted to be the one to give me my first glimpse of his beloved tree. It was one of those spring days when the sun had the warmth of an early summer morning. He bounded, and I walked over the freshly cut grass. Then, yards from the unprotected Elfin Oak, he stopped abruptly. His face moved from horror to an ineffable sadness. I asked what was wrong. It was the tree. Part of one of the fairy's wings had been snapped off. We must go back to the office now. We walked in silence. At number 9, he went upstairs to his room and locked the door. I've never seen anything like it and found it so difficult to believe that this upset could plunge him into such despair. Over the years, little things could and did tip him into depression. He possessed a vein of sensitivity that reacted all too often, sometimes unpredictably, and produced hurt unimaginable to most of us. On that occasion, he stayed in his office for 3 days and nights, never once eating, perhaps not even drinking. His silence unnerved me. I had yet to learn to slip notes under his door when it happened. When at last he emerged and came into my office, his face was grey, his body stooped. It was amazing to me that vital man Peter Brook had described in such adultery terms was the one standing before me, all because of an act of vandalism. A week later, I asked what had made him so ill. "I'm not ill," he said. "I'm suffering from contemporary society, the sickness of it. Think of all the care that went into restoring those little people and animals living in that tree, and some sick yobbos snap off a wing. They're the ones that are ill. Me, I just want to write scripts and books, poetry and music to make the world a better place. I'm not the one that's ill, they are. In the late 60s and 70s, Spike's mental state it was extremely fragile, and not only the damage not it was not only a damaged fairy on the elfin oak that could trigger a depression. A picture on the wall hanging out of True could do it. As time passed, it came to seem almost normal for him to lock himself in the room for days. Inevitably, this meant this is still Norma, spent a lot of time on the telephone to Patty and came to know her well. She warned me that he was a self-medicator. As the tablets were on prescription, he should not have been able to get them without one, but he had a supplier. He consumed tripotazole, triptazole, a damaging antidepressant drug with as little concern as children pop Smarties, up to 6 tablets a day. Patty advised me to put placebos in his tablet bottles, so I did when I could. He did not seem to notice the difference. How Patty lived through the start of a depression and his brooding, raging moods, I'll never know. She loved the man, and to her it must have been torture. One refuge was spending, and then there were her uncontrollable splurges of gorging. I might as well be living in the fridge, she told me more than once. Spike found this difficult to cope with, and when he had enough, he moved into the office, which caused her to eat even more. Once he was locked in the office, she would ring to talk to him, but he would not take her calls. So she either rang me or came to number 9 to find out how he was. Although he would not talk to her, he always wanted to know whether she had called. This was a small comfort to Patty. When her weight ballooned, it was her turn to pop pills, diet pills. Never a week passed without her trying some new slimming aid. When those failed, she found doctors who could be persuaded to give injections to curb her appetite. During one episode, she came to the office and her appearance was shocking. I told her things were bad with Spike. She sat down quickly, dived into her handbag, and broke off a piece of chocolate. Please have some. It's Lindt, and it's very nice. When I shook my head, she burst into tears. I can't help myself when he gets a depression. The stress of being married to Spike must have been horrendous. The longer I worked with him, the more fascinated I became by this complex character. One day he was totally incapacitated. The next, a man brimming with ideas and energy enough to charge round a squash court. Why was he so driven, so talented, often impossible, but so vulnerable? At times he made me furious, but my heart ached for him at the first signs of depression. I learned to recognize them. Sometimes it would be caused by something in particular, like the Elfin Oak episode. At others, it just came upon him. The first indication I would get was a slowing down of his normally lightning mental responses in bouts of exercise. Then the lethargy became total. The normally open office windows were closed, his blinds drawn, the electric fires put on, food ignored. I would sit with him when I sensed he needed the presence of another human being. Neither of us would speak. On other occasions, he preferred to be alone. I once asked him to explain how he felt at such times, and he gave me this poem, Manic Depression, published some years later in Small Dreams of a Scorpion. The pain is too much. 1,000 grim winters grow in my head. In my ears, the sound of the coming dead. All seasons, all sane, all living, all pain. No opiate to lock still my senses. Only left the body tenses. He told me he had written it in the psychiatric wing of St. Luke's Hospital from 1953 to 1954, and I realized that the poor devil had suffered like this for decades with little hope of a cure. At such times, he could not bear any form of noise. His definition of noise was different from other people's. The ring of a doorbell, the shutting of a door seemed to him as bad as the sound of a pneumatic drill. Unless one had experienced it, he said, it was impossible to imagine the feeling of utter desolation that followed. It was devastating to see him in this state, huddled in a chair, his shoulders rounded, his legs up against his chest. No matter how desperate he felt, I never feared he would commit suicide because he loved his 4 children too much to put them through such an ordeal. But his habit of self-medicating worried me. He could so easily forget how many he'd taken. Even worse than the triptazole was a dreadful drug, Tuinol, which had the advantage of bringing him out of the trough more quickly than other medication, but after recovery would plunge him into an even deeper misery than he was suffering before. I was told that 8 Tuinol was a lethal dose, so I started to sneak into his office when he was in the bathroom to see how many he had used. But he had his secret supplier, so I could never be sure how many he had taken. Those were the nightmare days. As soon as Spike sensed that the black dog was about to take over, he moved into his office, which must have seemed like a womb to him. There he was self-sufficient, and I made sure the outside world could not intrude. He felt he was better alone, and above all, he was determined the children should not see him. His system closed down to such an extent that he neither ate, drank, nor went to the loo. When I came to know him better, I used to push notes under the door so he was aware I was still in the office. I felt it was a comfort to him to know there was somebody else in the building. Often I stayed till 9:30 or 10, and then I would write another note to let him know I would be home in 20 minutes if he wanted someone to talk to. On reflection, I wonder whether this was more for my peace of mind than his. Sometimes the phone would ring at 2 or 3 in the morning. Are you awake? No. Well, now you are. On these occasions, he never discussed himself or his depression. He just wanted to talk to somebody. Tell me about yourself, he would say. Are you all right, Norm? And then we would chat inconsequently, sometimes for an hour or two. I knew he was emerging from a depression as soon as a note appeared on his door. It meant he was preparing to come back into the world. It would say, leave me alone, or something else less polite. Then he would come out of his office, his whole appearance changed, with large purple bags hanging over his cheekbones, his body hunched and his gait unsure. The next stage would be a curt, nasty, why do you keep me unemployed? But I always shrugged it off.
That was a very that was an ideal selection to give a picture of kind of the state that he's in. And manic is the word. Yeah, bipolar. It's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
And then the medication, taking too much, not taking it. Now people are mixing in placebos.
And that memoir of Norma Farns's, there's like 20 stories like that.
Right.
It was happening a lot.
Throughout. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That paints a pretty strong picture, for sure. Cool. Heavy. Yeah, I was waiting for the sort of drugs to show up too. It was a matter of time.
I mean, as far like there's a lot of stories in that book about I mean, when he was on the up, he was they were always at this particular restaurant pretty much every night. It'd be him, Peter Sellers, like random sort of friends that they have, girlfriends, all of that sort of thing. I don't think he was an alcoholic or anything. I mean, no more than any other British
Englishman.
man going out
Sure.
to a restaurant every night,
Right. Sure.
But the antidepressants certainly were a problem.
Right. And you probably have thrown a few drinks on that with a bottle
Yeah.
of wine. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. The highs are very high and then the lows get very, really, very low. You're you're putting yourself, locking the door. You have 4 children too. I mean, and at various ages and disappear for days at a time. And it's a lot. It puts a lot of strain on people.
Yeah. I don't know if I've mentioned Jane yet, the daughter he had with Patty. So he had 3 children, Sean, Laura, and Seela with his first wife, June. And with Patty, he had Jane. I don't remember what year Jane was born.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yep.
From his memoirs in 1968, 16th of April, my 50th birthday. This has got to stop. Patty bought me an antique Victorian tie-pin. The children bought me a vintage bottle of Chateau Margaux 1947. I laid it down. It didn't get up. Years later, I drank it at Christmas. It laid me down. I took all the children, save Jane, to the GPO Tower revolving restaurant. How did the waiters ever remember which table they were serving? Afterwards, we all went to see Annie Get Your Gun. What a wonderful score by Irving Berlin, and funny too. In May, Peter Sellers, having married his dream girl Britt Eklund, invited Prince Charles to lunch with the Goons at Peter's house. Seacombe had a moustache and a goatee beard as he was appearing in The Four Musketeers. He was all 4 of them. Alas, Peter's marriage didn't last long. I was present one day when she came back from a shopping trip. He eyed her with distaste. She threw a pair of gold cufflinks down on his table. The atmosphere was terrible, so I said, I've got to leave now. My house is on fire. And went. Dick Lester, the bald film director whose films with the Beatles had been a roaring success, wanted me to appear in a film of the bed sitting room in June. He wanted it rewritten by his favorite writer, John Woods, who I didn't think was in the same league of comedy writers that John Antrobus and I were. There were some silly, unexplainable jokes where Michael Hordern said, I've forgotten to put any wooden planks up my back before getting into bed. The film won a Peace Award in Russia. I enjoyed doing it and some bits of the original play were left in, but the stage show had been hilarious and I was sad the film wasn't. Still, it was a good try by Lester. In July, Laura was voted head girl of St. Mary's Abbey School and won the school prize for senior art. She also won the drama award. On Anzac Day in Woy Woy, the veterans paraded in a march past and Captain L.A. Milligan marched with them. After the parade, they all gathered at the Returned Soldiers Club and proceeded to get blotto, except for the captain who came home sober. What was wrong with the man? In August, I was back in Australia for my parents' 54th wedding anniversary. We had dinner in the kitchen. I had bought them a bottle of champagne, master of the obvious. Dad, have some, I said. Well, the doctor said I shouldn't, he said, but what the hell? So he took a sip and suddenly his head slumped forward. Suppose the doctor was right. He began to recover a little, but he was still dopey. I took the back of his chair and dragged him to his bedroom. He managed to get his pajamas on and get into bed. In the morning, he was still dopey. I phoned for an ambulance and Desmond and I got him into it. He kept saying how good it was to have two strong sons. He would never come home again. I visited him in Gosford Hospital. He was paralyzed down his left side. They had rigged up a sling to enable him to try to lift himself up and down. He spoke quite clearly and asked Mum to buy him some dates. He was worried about his bowel movements. I saw him every day for a week and then I had to get back home for some bloody job. Dad was moved to Newcastle Hospital bloody miles away. Desmond would drive the 120 miles with Mum on weekends, but Dad deteriorated. My family knew little of this as they were holidaying in Tobago. They traveled by banana boat. MV Golfito is the name of the boat. I guess he means his children and his wife. 1969. In February came a very sad day for me. I received a telegram from my mother. And so that's from Spike's memoirs. I'm now going to switch to Norma's. Then in the early morning of 14th of January 1969, Spike rang me from home. He'd had a nightmare about his father drowning and been unable to save him. A few hours later, his brother Desmond telephoned from Sydney. Their father had died. It was not a complete surprise. When Spike visited his parents at Woy Woy the previous August for their 54th wedding anniversary, Leo had had a stroke. Although he was due to return to England, he did not want to leave, so I booked a studio in Sydney to enable him to do some dubbing that was urgently required for a film. He stayed on until October, by which time Leo had improved. At the end of the year, his condition deteriorated again, but for some reason, Grandma, which is what Norma used to call Spike's mother, decided against telling Spike and never mentioned it in her letters to me. Spike locked himself in his office for 3 days. The sign on his door said, "Leave alone." He wrote in his diary, "Goodbye to a terrible year. I sleep at the office as much as possible to avoid the tension at home. It is also the first year without my father. Please, God, make people nicer."
Yeah, that's a tough thing to go through at any phase of life.
Yeah.
And when the doctor says, put the champagne
Don't.
down, strongly advise you listen. He must have maybe had a stroke, or it sounds like
he had a stroke.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
he had a stroke.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope Spike makes it. I hope he gets through it.
So here is a poem he wrote called "To My Father."
Okay.
Why did you go? Yeah. Yeah. We're just going to pepper them all the way through.
I like it. No, it's good. I like it.
Why did you go, Dad? So much left undone, so much unsaid. You never finished the story. There was so much wine left. Did you order too much, or did we drink too little? Mum had put fresh sheets on the bed, so why did you go in the middle of the song? The tune was so good. We wanted to hear the end. Why did you go? There was so much love, the fridge was full of it. If you were coming back, why did you send your suit to the cleaners? You know, tonight there was Gunsmoke on telly. Tomorrow we were going to walk up Blackwall Mountain. Why did you go? And what about Mesopotamia? What did happen at the Battle of Chaibar? I've arranged the muskets in the gun room. So why did you go? We are waiting, waiting.